Welcome to the LDN radio show, brought to you by the LDN Research Trust. I'm your host, Linda Elsegood. I have an exciting lineup of guest speakers who are LDN experts in their field. We will be discussing low-dose Naltrexone and its many uses in autoimmune diseases, cancers, etc. Thank you for joining us. Today we're joined by Amy from the US, who takes LDN for the triad, being MCAS, EDS and POTS, along with mold toxicity and small fibre neuropathy. Thank you for joining us today, Amy.
Hi, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And I should say, world-famous cake decorator too.
Used to be. I do it a little bit now. My kids expect cakes at least.
Oh, I'm sure they do.
Pick or not, they want them.
So could you tell us, when did you first start to notice these symptoms? What came first?
I mean, my whole life. I've known something was wrong my entire life. I've known I was, a little bit different. We always called them like, oh, that's just kind of an Amy quirk. I would get stressed out and I would get hives, or I'd have a weird reaction to a medication, or, we had a CDC investigation on me after a hepatitis vaccine paralyzed my legs one time, and um weird food reactions that would come and go even as a kid. I didn't eat peanuts for about 10, 15 years of my life because they just made me feel weird and I couldn't explain it. I was a kid. I would say they make my head feel hot, or they make me dizzy. And, the allergy testing was always negative, and it was just kind of like, oh, she's sensitive, or, you know, um, but it really wasn't. And of course, I was breaking bones all the time too, even though I wasn't athletic in the slightest. I was always breaking toes and hands and legs and things like that. Super flexible. But it really didn't get to be kind of debilitating until I was about 19, about 2009, and I had gotten mono and strep at the same time during finals of my freshman year in college. And after that, I just got really tired. I was tired all the time. Nothing seemed to help. And it was just ever since I got that. And from there on out, the GI stuff started, and the fatigue and the brain fog, and really bad like heat intolerance, kind of every little quirk, from when I was a kid just ramped up. And I knew something was wrong, and I went to countless doctors from there on out trying to figure it out. But it was always like, oh, well, you have, horrible nausea, diarrhea, and reflux and things like that. Well, you're going to go to the gastroenterologist for this, and then the allergist and the pulmonologist. But nobody seemed to be able to, put it all together. Um, and I started having what I called episodes, where every few months I would have a period of time where I was so tired I could barely get out of bed, and I could barely eat anything. I couldn't like keep anything in my stomach. I felt like it was just a brick in there. It wouldn't digest. And there were periods of time where I could only like live off of, you know, protein shakes and saltines. And this would go on for 12 years, where I would get in this flare up from something or other causing it, whether, oops, it was, I clicked out of it, whether it was stress or, something I ate that set it off. And it would go on for a few weeks, and I would go to doctors begging for help, and they would tell me, "Oh, those are panic attacks. Your face is turning red, and you feel like you're dying, and you're having all of these GI issues and everything. Like those are panic attacks, and the hives are, from stress." And I was like, "No, you don't understand. Like I feel like I am dying when these are happening. I know what a panic attack is." And it was just, oh, reflux, or they'd find incidental findings. I got my gallbladder out, or PCOS and hiatal hernias and things. And, nothing they did to help those things made a dent. Nothing helped. It just made it worse. And it kind of went that way, just on and off trying to find answers. But I was able to function enough to keep a job. And then I got pregnant, and it all just kind of went downhill from there. After two back-to-back pregnancies, my body just kind of said, that's enough. And that's when I started having like it was about a year after my daughter was born when I started noticing like these aren't panic attacks. I started being adamant, these are not panic attacks. I feel like I'm dying. And then one Thanksgiving, I had pecan pie, which I've always had issues with nuts, and my face swelled up and my tongue got really tingly, and I started getting all of these tremors all over my body. And I knew from there on out that it was anaphylaxis. Regardless of whatever the doctors wanted to tell me, I knew it was an allergic reaction. And from there on out, I just started reacting to everything. Um, it I kept losing food until I was only eating rice. And it went on like that for quite a while. It's been 2.5 years now, and I still only have 6 things I can eat, and that's with, all of my medications. And I'm just now getting to a point where I feel stable enough to try and add more to my diet. And it's taken that long.
Wow.
So it's been a journey, but
How did you
um
find the doctor, the right doctor?
so well, I thought part of the problem was I was with one of the best hospital systems in the country. Both of my parents worked there, and everybody always says you go to this place. I don't want to name them, but you go to this place if you have issues. And they'll figure it out. Well, I was with them for 16 years, and all that they told me was that I had reflux and anxiety, and eventually they told me I had a somatoform disorder. And I had enough. And I finally, my grandpa had been diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos, pretty much on his deathbed. He was still hypermobile enough at 92 years old for a doctor to say, like, this is interesting. And looking at your medical records, this is interesting. So that kind of got the ball rolling for me. And that's when I started really researching it, being like, oh, this is exactly what it is. Um, and I first um, got diagnosed, or at least I had doctors recognize that I had POTS. Um, and that kind of opened the door to it as well. But everything that they were telling me to do to fix the POTS was not helping. And I was like, okay, there's more to this. And once I started getting the mast cell treatment, everything got better. But I struggled to find a doctor who would A, take me seriously, and B, be willing to take on my case. Because by that point, I was already so complex that like nobody wanted to touch me. And I had multiple like hematology and allergy referrals in, and they never called me back. And I would be calling them every single day, and they'd either tell me, oh, well, it's pending, or they would just say, we don't handle mast cell. We don't treat patients like you. So I was desperate. I had lost, I think 60 pounds in 3 months because I could not eat. And I was starving, and I couldn't, I had two very young kids. I had 1 and a 2-year old, and I couldn't, take care of them. It was terrifying. I was terrified of dying in front of my kids, truly. Because I never knew when the next anaphylactic reaction would happen. And it was pretty much constant. So I wrote out this long email, and I just sent it to multiple doctors, like every single doctor I could find on the Mastocytosis Society's website, begging for help. And thankfully, um, 2 got back to me. One was Dr. Afrin, who wrote a really nice letter, just, basically, explaining, how he was sorry I was in that situation. He kind of just gave me a list of doctors. I really appreciate him. Um, and another was the doctor that I see now, who happens to be 30 minutes away from me. And she is just absolutely amazing. She absolutely saved my life. She's gotten me referrals to all of my other specialists now. And I have this amazing team of doctors who believe me and, let me kind of take charge of my care. And if I'm weary to start a medication or what, they're all on my team. And it's thankfully been getting better ever since then, because it was really scary for quite a while.
So what medications are you taking?
Oh boy. So I have really bad, like my 2 worst allergies are corn and soy, which at least in America are in just about everything, and whether it's named in the ingredients or not, especially corn. So I have to get everything compounded, which is so hard and so expensive. but I am getting, so try to think. I'm taking Zysol, so levocetirizine and famotidine, um, oral ketotifen, and singular, what else? Of course, the LDN. And I take hydroxyzine as needed. I can't have Benadryl, and Xolair. So, and the Xolair has helped as well, thankfully. That kind of pulled me out of my initial slumps. So, very thankful for that.
Okay, so when did you start taking the medication that was going to help you get to where you are now? How long ago was that?
Um, it's been about, so kind of the Xolair got the ball rolling, and I started that about a year and a half ago. And it didn't eliminate any of the things I was reacting to, but it lessened the severity of it. So rather than, having these terrifying reactions every single day and going to the hospital multiple times a month and um, being on high doses of prednisone and everything, it tapered it down a little bit. And I was able to add a couple things back to my diet so that I was no longer horribly malnourished. Um, and then after that, I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to try something else because I had been hesitant to add more medications to my list. And that's when I started the LDN about a year ago. And I started really, really, really low because I'm super sensitive to medications. And I think it took about 5 months to get up to the dose where I'm at now. And with every single dose increase, I would kind of get a flare up and pop symptoms. And so I took it very slow. But then once those initial symptoms wore off, I felt a little bit better than I did before. And I started noticing my chemical sensitivities and reactions to smells of any sort, foods and things like that, started getting better. And those were some of my worst reactions were not only the smell of like fragrances and cleaning products and like adhesives and things like that, but even the smell of food. We I can't cook for my family. I can start to now a little bit. I'm starting to get back into it, but for about a year and a half, I couldn't cook for my family. And while my husband was working, my mom would have to cook and cook in the garage because we could not have food cooking in the house at all. I would have to be locked up in my bedroom with tarps over the vents and over the doors because it was so bad. And my eyelids would swell up and my throat would swell up, and it was absolutely terrifying. Um, and the only thing that's really helped with that has been the LDN, and it's been a total game changer. I can go many places without a mask anymore. For a while, I couldn't even, leave my bedroom some days without a big mask on. Um, and as long as I kind of stay, as long as I'm in a well ventilated place now, I can do pretty well, which has been a game changer. I can kind of, go back into society a little bit and and have friends and do things with my kids. So it's been great. I've just started kind of putting myself back out there a little bit.
So when did you start the LDN?
I think it was about a year ago. It was probably May or June of 2023. And I started probably on like a 12th of a milligram or something. So it took a little bit for me to really notice like, oh, hey, this is making a big difference. And once I noticed it was making a big difference, I bumped up a little faster. But yeah, it's every time I bumped up that dose, I noticed I was feeling better.
Okay, so you've been on LDN a year. You could actually still get further benefits. It's still
Hmm.
not the end of the time.
Hmm.
On what dose are you on now?
4.5.
Okay. Because some people are actually going higher than
Yeah.
4.5 and getting better
Hmm.
benefits. But that is something that you'd have to weigh up with your doctor if you
Yeah.
to ramp it up any higher.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, definitely.
hmm. But it sounds as though you are certainly getting there. You
Yeah, this is
a
the
lot
first time
better.
I've felt hopeful, at least. For a long time I was kind of I was pretty depressed, and I was terrified because I was like, this is not any way to live, cooped up in my house and unable to eat and starving. And I was hospitalized for 2 weeks in end of 2022 because I was so malnourished that my potassium and my magnesium levels were like dangerously low, and the hospital wouldn't even give me a potassium infusion. My allergist had recommended that I get it in the ICU because I was at such a risk of reacting to it, and the hospital was like, "This is you're too much of a liability. We can't even do that." So that was scary when, the hospital can't even help you. Um, and
I can understand your apprehension of
yeah,
of increasing the foods that you can eat. That must be a really scary prospect.
yeah. And it kind of it drives my family crazy a little bit about how hesitant I am because, for the last, well, for my entire life, certain foods have set me off. I never knew what it was about. And I've spent so much of my life being uncomfortable and being sick, and especially these last 2.5 years of like terrifying symptoms where I really could have, gone into shock or could have died. And I don't, I'm afraid to take that risk again. Um, and even as much as I would love to expand my diet and eat things, it's like I'm finally feeling comfortable for the first time in my life if I just avoid everything. If I just stick to, my few foods, I have had no GI symptoms for the first time in my life. Nothing. And my head feels clearer, and it's amazing. It's amazing what it can do. Just
So,
sticking to what doesn't bother me.
so what are the foods you're sticking to?
So I can have, and these are all from like very specific brands because of like the corn contamination and everything, but I can have rice and eggs and chicken, milk, apples, and potatoes. So it's at least somewhat of a varied diet. I get, I don't have any deficiencies or anything anymore. So, I feel like, hey, I'm doing okay on this.
So if you could try the
Mhm.
next food to see if you reacted, what would it be?
Yeah.
What do you really fancy?
I think about this a lot.
I'm sure you do.
Well, it's a it's a dilemma between like what would I really like to get back, because I mean I was, I worked in bakeries my whole life, so I would really love, a nice piece of chocolate or like a cake or something, but so it's a matter of what I would really like and then what would probably help me the most in, my healing and everything. So I'm probably, the logical side of me is saying, we should probably try a vegetable next. So I'm probably going to try like broccoli or something with some nutrients in it before I start trying some fun stuff. But I'm finally at a point where I'm almost a little bit excited about it, which is totally, it's crazy from where I came from, where I was afraid to even look at something. I was so, so disgusted by it.
What are you able to drink?
Water and milk. Um, and that's about it. Haven't tried anything else. And even, tap water sets me off because it's chlorinated, and somehow the chlorine in it bothers me. And then because I have, coconut and soy or corn allergies, a lot of the filtration usually contains coconut carbon or something like that. So I have like one water filter that I can drink from, that I can put tap in, and then a couple brands of bottled water that I can drink. And that's about it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is, isn't it? It really
hmm
is. So
It's
how
when
are
I
your
explain it to people, it's crazy. They don't even can't even fathom it.
yeah. So what do your family think of the improvements in you now?
They've definitely been commenting on it now. You know, just the fact that where I live, I'm in the South, and it's getting really, really hot, and heat is a huge trigger for me. It still is, but just, I've been able to go to the playground with my kids a little bit, and there were, a couple of years, at least one good year, where I couldn't go outside if it was above, 70 degrees. because that heat would set me off immediately. One of my worst reactions was just standing outside taking pictures of my kid on his first day of school, and it was really, really hot out, and it set me off, and I ended up in the ER, and it was terrifying. Um, so they definitely notice that, and they're always really excited if they see me, looking at different foods or thinking about it, or mentioning like, oh, I should try this sometime. Because from where I was, which was bedbound and, really, really sick and withering away, to, getting up and playing with my kids and interacting and going places, it's totally night and day. And my life is nowhere near normal, but just the fact that I am here now is fantastic.
Do you still have periods of being totally exhausted?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm still very tired, and I don't know how much of that is, related to the MCAS or the POTS. My POTS is still in it's still being addressed. The mast cell stuff was kind of on the front burner for so long, just fighting to survive, that I never really had a chance to address the POTS at all. So I think that's part of it. I'm just now getting to the point where I'm like, maybe a beta blocker would sound good, or something. But for a while, I didn't even think about how tired I was because I was so busy just trying to breathe. um, and I'm on a lot of antihistamines, which I'm sure doesn't help with fatigue.
Do you faint a lot?
No, thankfully not. I'm grateful that I'm able to kind of catch myself. I do stand up, and it's funny, I have like scrapes on my doors and stuff of like all of the places where if I stand up, I go and I lean on a certain wall. I know how to navigate my house blind now because, when I stand up, my vision goes out. But thankfully, I've only passed out a few times entirely. Um, and usually there's heat involved with that.
Well, that's such an amazing story. I wouldn't say you are in perfect health. We can
Yeah.
see and hear what you're saying, but
Yeah.
you are taking the first steps to getting your health back, which is
Yeah. For the
really,
first time in my life, I feel like there is progress to be made, and progress I've already made. And even though I am sicker now than I was, 6 years ago, my head feels clearer and I feel more optimistic because it has a name now. And I have doctors to listen to me and not tell me, you're crazy. Um, I'm actually getting the right treatment instead of just being sent, to a psychiatrist, or sent to therapy, which never did anything because it was addressing my they thought I had a somatoform disorder. So all of my therapy was around my health anxiety, when in reality my health anxiety was actually like keeping me alive. It was a survival, tactic. Um, so it's been crazy, but I'm really glad things are finally starting to look up. It's been a long time coming.
well, thank you very much for having shared your experience with us. And it'd be really interesting to interview you again next year and see how you're getting
Yeah. Hopefully I'll have a whole diet, expanded diet and all sorts of fun stuff to eat. I'll be eating a pizza.
on. Don't push it.
I know, right? That's probably my last thing I'll be able to eat, but I can dream.
I'm Dr. Leonard Weinstock, a guy who's been prescribing LDN since 2005, and I've seen the wonders. And I keep on seeing them, especially in hard to diagnose conditions. They're not that hard to do, but once you know about mast cell activation syndrome, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, you'll find that 17% of your friends or relatives have one or more of these conditions, and you can help them. We're making a documentary to wake up the medical community, to educate the population, but we need funding. So please fund whatever you can afford, no matter how little. www mcasfund.com. That's mcasfund.com.
Any questions or comments you may have, please email me, Linda, Linda, at ldnrt.org. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciated your company. Until next time, stay safe and keep well.